My name is Alexandra, 23 years old from Pennsylvania. After an exhausting week at work, I dragged myself home only to find Ethan sprawled on the couch surrounded by empty chip bags and soda cans. He looked up lazily. "Hey sis, my room needs cleaning and I have laundry." When I refused, Mom slapped me hard across the face. "Worthless girl," she hissed. Dad appeared in the doorway, leather belt in hand. I froze in terror. If you're watching this, please let me know where you're from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe to follow my journey from family servant to finding my freedom. I grew up in what looked like a traditional American family from the outside. Dad Harold worked as a sales manager at a local car dealership, bringing home the primary income. Mom Margaret was a stay-at-home mother who took pride in keeping our suburban house spotless and preparing home-cooked meals every night. Until I was 4 years old, life seemed normal, even happy. There are faded photographs of me, as a toddler being pushed on swings by smiling parents opening Christmas presents with genuine joy on their faces. Everything changed when Ethan was born. Not immediately, but gradually, like a slow leak that eventually drains all the air from a tire. Mom shifted her focus entirely to her precious son, the boy she had always wanted. At first, the changes were subtle. Mom spent less time reading me bedtime stories. Dad stopped taking me to the park on weekends. They were busy with the baby, I told myself. That was normal. By the time I was 7 and Ethan was 3, the differences in how we were treated became impossible to ignore. I was expected to keep my room clean, help set the table, and put away my toys. Reasonable chores for a child, perhaps. But Ethan, he could leave his toys scattered across the living room floor, and Mom would clean up after him with a smile. "He's just a little boy," she'd say, though. I had been expected to do the same at his age. As we grew older, the gap in expectations widened. By 10, I was responsible for washing dishes, helping with laundry, and vacuuming the house. Ethan, meanwhile, was free to play video games and hang out with friends. When I asked why he didn't have to help, Mom would look at me like I had suggested something ridiculous. "Boys need their playtime," she'd explain. "Besides, you need to learn these skills for when you have your own family someday." The different treatment extended beyond chores. On my 12th birthday, Mom made a basic chocolate cake and invited 2 friends from school for a small celebration. 2 months later, for Ethan's 8th birthday, they rented out a laser tag arena, invited his entire class, and ordered a custom 3-tier cake shaped like a spaceship. I remember standing in the corner, watching Ethan open present after present, feeling invisible. "That's different," Dad would say whenever I tried to point out the unfairness. "Ethan is our only son. We want him to have opportunities I never had growing up." High school brought new challenges. While I excelled academically, earning straight A's and joining the debate team, my achievements were acknowledged with brief nods. When Ethan made the junior varsity basketball team as a freshman, my parents attended every game, cheering loudly from the stands. They framed his team photo and displayed it prominently in the living room. My debate team trophy sat gathering dust in my bedroom. College was the next battleground. Despite my excellent grades and SAT scores, my parents made it clear that they had limited funds for my education. "We need to save for Ethan's college," Dad explained, while reviewing financial aid forms with me. "Boys need good degrees to support their families. You'll probably just get married anyway." I managed to secure a partial scholarship to a state university 2 hours from home. For 4 years, I juggled classes with part-time jobs at the campus bookstore and a local coffee shop. I still graduated with $20,000 in student loan debt. Meanwhile, my parents started a college fund for Ethan the day he was born. After graduation with an accounting degree in hand, I moved back home temporarily. The plan was to save money for 6 months before getting my own place. The cost of rent in our area was prohibitive on an entry-level salary, especially with student loans to pay off. I found a job at a local financial services firm, working 9 to 5, sometimes later during tax season. During this time, I formed a close friendship with Jessica, a coworker who quickly became my confidant. Unlike my family, Jessica actually listened when I spoke. She noticed when I was quiet or seemed down. Over lunch breaks, I found myself opening up to her about my family dynamic. "That's not normal, Alex," she said. One day, after I mentioned casually that I had stayed up until midnight doing Ethan's laundry because he had a basketball game the next day, "You're his sister, not his personal maid." "It's just how our family works," I replied, though Jessica's words planted a seed of doubt. Things took a turn for the worse when Ethan dropped out of college during his sophomore year. He had been attending a private university on a full ride from our parents, living in a nice off-campus apartment they paid for. He claimed college wasn't for him and that he needed time to find his path. My parents welcomed him home with open arms, assuring him he could stay as long as he needed while figuring things out. "Everyone's journey is different," Mom said soothingly, as she prepared his favorite meal to celebrate his return. I couldn't help wondering if they would have been so understanding if I had been the one to drop out. 6 months had passed since I moved back home, and with Ethan's return, the prospect of saving enough to move out seemed increasingly distant. The dynamics in our house were about to get much worse. With Ethan back home, our household quickly adjusted to accommodate his presence. Actually, adjusted isn't the right word. The entire family revolving around him like planets around the sun would be more accurate. Mom transformed into his personal chef, housekeeper, and cheerleader, all rolled into one. Dad became his ATM and chauffeur, never questioning when Ethan needed money for networking events, which were actually just parties or rides to meet friends when he was too lazy to drive himself. The division of labor in our house became crystal clear. Mom cooked and cleaned, Dad paid the bills, Ethan existed. And I picked up all the slack, becoming the backup housekeeper, cook, and errand runner whenever Mom was too busy catering to Ethan's needs. Every morning, I woke up at 5:30 to get ready for work, make my lunch, and help with breakfast. Ethan rarely emerged from his room before noon, but Mom insisted on having fresh coffee and breakfast foods ready for him whenever he wakes up. This meant I often had to prepare extra bacon, pancake batter, or whatever else Mom planned to serve him before heading to my full-time job. After working 8 to 9 hours, I'd return home to find Ethan lounging on the couch, surrounded by dishes and snack wrappers. The living room looked like a convenience store had exploded. Empty bags of chips, half-eaten sandwiches, soda cans, and video game controllers littered every surface. "How was your day, honey?" Mom would ask as I walked in, but before I could answer, she'd continue. "Could you help clean up a bit? I've been so busy with the laundry." Ethan had basketball practice with his old high school friends and needed his special jersey washed. Meanwhile, Ethan wouldn't even look up from his phone to acknowledge my existence. The few times he did speak to me directly, it was to make demands. "Alex, can you grab me another soda while you're up? Hey, I need my blue button-down shirt for tomorrow. Can you iron it? Mom said you're making dinner tonight. Make sure there's no onions. You know I hate onions." The requests gradually escalated from occasional favors to expected services. By the second month of his return, Ethan was treating me like his personal assistant. He expected me to track his schedule, remind him of appointments, and even call in sick for him when he had agreed to help a friend move, but decided he'd rather play video games instead. One particularly frustrating evening, I found a pile of dirty clothes outside my bedroom door with a sticky note that read, "Need these by tomorrow morning. Thanks, sis." When I confronted Ethan about it, he looked genuinely confused. "What's the big deal? Mom's busy with other stuff, and you know how to work the washing machine." "So do you," I replied. "You're 19, not 9. He laughed and turned back to his video game. "Yeah, but that's girl stuff." I tried talking to my parents about the unfair distribution of responsibilities. One Sunday afternoon, while Dad was watching football and Mom was preparing Ethan's favorite pot roast, I carefully brought up the subject. "I'm working full-time and still doing more housework than Ethan, who's home all day," I explained, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Don't you think he should be contributing more?" Dad didn't take his eyes off the television. "Your brother is going through a transition period. He needs support, not criticism." Mom's response was even more dismissive. "Alexandra, don't be ungrateful. We put a roof over your head, food on your plate. The least you can do is help out around here instead of complaining." Their reactions made me realize they didn't see a problem with the arrangement. In their minds, this was simply how things should be. Daughters serve, sons are served. After that failed conversation, I vented to Jessica during our lunch break the next day. We sat at our usual corner table in the small cafe across from our office, building my salad untouched as I recounted the latest developments. "You need to move out," Jessica said bluntly, stabbing at her pasta. "This isn't healthy, Alex. They're taking advantage of you." I know, I sighed, but rent is so expensive and I'm still paying off student loans. I've only saved about a quarter of what I need for a security deposit plus first and last month's rent. Jessica leaned forward. "What if we became roommates? My lease is up in 3 months. We could look for a 2-bedroom, split the costs." The idea planted a seed of hope, but I knew it would take time to make it happen. In the meantime, I had to survive my current situation. Work offered no respite from stress. Our department head, Diana, was notorious for her exacting standards and last-minute requests. The week after my conversation with Jessica, Diana assigned me an urgent project with an impossible deadline. For 3 days straight, I stayed at the office until 8 p.m., frantically analyzing financial data and preparing reports. When I finally got home on the third night, exhausted and dreaming of a hot shower and bed, I found the house in chaos. Ethan had invited his basketball friends over for an impromptu party. Empty pizza boxes, beer cans, and chips covered every surface in the living room and kitchen. Music blasted from speakers, and several young men I didn't recognize were playing video games and shouting at the television. Ethan spotted me from across the room and waved lazily. "Hey, sis. Great timing. We're out of dip, and these guys are staying for another couple of hours." I stood in the doorway, my work bag still slung over my shoulder, staring at the mess in disbelief. "Where are Mom and Dad?" "They went to Aunt Linda's for dinner. Said they'd be back late." He tossed me his wallet. "There's $20 in there. The store on the corner should still be open." Something inside me snapped, but I was too tired for a confrontation. I dropped his wallet on the counter, walked to my room, and locked the door behind me. The next morning, I left for work before anyone else woke up, leaving the disaster zone untouched. I later learned that Mom spent her entire morning cleaning up, never once asking Ethan to help. When I returned that evening, the house was spotless, and no one mentioned the party. This was my life now, invisible when they didn't need me, indispensable when they did, and the worst was yet to come. It was a Friday night, nearly 3 months since Ethan had returned home. I had stayed late at work helping Diana prepare for an important client meeting on Monday. By the time I left the office, it was past 9, and all I wanted was to crawl into bed and sleep for 12 hours straight. When I pulled into our driveway, I noticed several unfamiliar cars parked along the curb. The house glowed with light, and I could hear music and laughter from the sidewalk. With a sinking feeling, I realized Ethan was hosting another party. I briefly considered turning around and getting a hotel room for the night, but my bank account couldn't handle the expense. Taking a deep breath, I pushed open the front door and stepped into chaos. The living room had been transformed into a makeshift dance floor. Our coffee table was pushed against the wall, covered with half-empty pizza boxes and red plastic cups. At least 15 people filled the space, most of them Ethan's former basketball teammates and their girlfriends. The kitchen was equally crowded with a group of guys mixing drinks and laughing loudly. I maneuvered through the crowd, dodging elbows and avoiding spilled drinks, searching for a path to my bedroom. Halfway there, Ethan spotted me and called out over the music. Alex, perfect timing. He disentangled himself from a conversation and made his way toward me, cup in hand. His eyes were slightly glazed, his movements loose. "The guys are hungry. Can you whip up some of those nachos you made last week? The ones with the jalapenos and stuff?" I stared at him in disbelief. "Are you serious right now? I just worked a 12-hour day. I'm exhausted." Ethan's smile faltered. "Come on, it'll take you like 20 minutes tops. The guys loved them last time." "No, Ethan, I'm going to bed. You want nachos, make them yourself." I pushed past him, continuing toward my room. His voice hardened. "What's your problem? It's not like you have plans or anything." I spun around, fatigue giving way to anger. "My problem is that I'm not your personal chef or maid. I'm your sister, and I've had a long day at my actual job. You know the thing you should be looking for instead of throwing parties every weekend." Several of Ethan's friends had stopped talking to watch our exchange. The embarrassment of being called out in front of them darkened Ethan's face. whatever he muttered, turning away. Forget I asked. I thought that was the end of it and continued to my room. I managed to get about 2 hours of sleep before loud pounding on my door jerked me awake. I fumbled for my phone. It was just past midnight. Alexandra, open this door right now. My father's voice boomed through the wood, followed by more pounding. Heart racing, I stumbled to the door and opened it to find both my parents standing in the hallway. Dad's face was flushed with anger, and Mom stood behind him, arms crossed tightly over her chest. What's going on? I asked, blinking against the hallway light. Your brother told us what happened, Dad said, his voice tight with controlled rage. How dare you embarrass him in front of his friends? I struggled to clear the fog of sleep from my brain. What are you talking about? Mom stepped forward. He asked you for a simple favor to make something for his guests, and you refused. Then, you insulted him in front of everyone. The absurdity of the situation hit me. Are you serious? I worked overtime today. I came home exhausted to find the house turned into a nightclub, and I'm the problem, because I wouldn't cook for his impromptu party. This is his home too, Dad said, and in this family, we support each other. Support, I laughed incredulously. Is that what you call this? When was the last time Ethan supported me? When was the last time either of you asked about my job or my day or anything about my life? Don't take that tone with us, Mom snapped. We've given you everything. A roof over your head, food support during college. Support during college, I worked 2 jobs and still graduated with debt, while you paid Ethan's full tuition and rent for an apartment he barely used, before dropping out. Mom's face contorted with anger. He's going through a difficult time. He needs our understanding, not criticism from his ungrateful sister. And what about me? My voice cracked. What about what I need? Mom stepped closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. He's the king in this house. You should be cleaning his toilet and grateful for the privilege. Know your place, Alexandra. The words hit me like a physical blow. I took a step back, tears welling in my eyes. Dad pointed his finger at my face. Tomorrow, you will apologize to your brother and make it up to him. This disrespect stops now. And if I don't? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Dad's expression darkened. Then you can find somewhere else to live. We won't tolerate this behavior under our roof. They turned and left, slamming my door behind them. I sank onto my bed, wrapping my arms around myself as silent tears streamed down my face. In that moment, I felt completely alone, betrayed by the very people who should have loved and protected me. Through the wall, I could still hear the bass from Ethan's music, the laughter of his friends, the sounds of a party continuing without a care. I curled into a ball on my bed, pulled the covers over my head, and tried to muffle the sounds of my sobs with my pillow. That night, something fundamental broke inside me. The thin thread of hope that my parents might someday see me as equal to my brother, that they might value my contributions and respect my boundaries, snapped completely. I felt hollow, carved out by years of unequal treatment, and culminating in this final betrayal. As dawn broke, I made a silent promise to myself. I would never again be anyone's servant, not even family, especially not family. Saturday morning arrived with pale sunlight filtering through my bedroom curtains. Despite the early hour, I'd barely slept, my mind racing with the confrontation from the night before. Mom's words echoed in my head. He's the king in this house. You should be cleaning his toilet. I lay in bed listening to the sounds of the house waking up. The coffee maker gurgling in the kitchen, the shower running in the bathroom, my parents' muffled voices from downstairs. Normally, I would have been up already helping Mom prepare breakfast, especially on weekends when she made her special French toast that Ethan loved. Not today. Today, I stayed in bed, staring at the ceiling, mentally cataloging my options. I had about $3,000 saved, not nearly enough for a security deposit and first month's rent in our area. Jessica's offer to be roommates wouldn't materialize for another 2 months when her lease ended. I had nowhere to go immediately. Around 9:30, footsteps thundered up the stairs, followed by pounding on my door. Alexandra, Ethan's voice. Where's breakfast? Mom says. You're supposed to be cooking today. I didn't answer. More pounding. I know you're in there, I'm hungry. Silence from my end. Fine, be that way. Mom Alex won't make breakfast. I heard him stomp down the stairs, followed by raised voices from the kitchen. A few minutes later, heavier footsteps approached my door, and my father's voice boomed through. Alexandra Marie, open. This door right now. Reluctantly, I got up, still wearing the clothes I'd fallen asleep in, and opened the door. Dad stood there, face flushed with anger, with Mom and Ethan visible in the hallway behind him. What is wrong with you? Dad demanded. Your mother asked you to make breakfast while she deals with the mess from last night, and you're in here sulking. I'm not making breakfast, I said quietly. I'm not feeling well. Don't lie to me. Dad's voice lowered dangerously. This is about last night, isn't it? You're still being disrespectful. I worked 60 hours this week. I replied, fighting to keep my voice steady. I came home to a house full of strangers and was asked to cook for them at 10 at night. I think I'm entitled to sleep in on my day off. Dad's eyes narrowed. We had an agreement. You live here rent-free, you help around the house. Ethan lives here rent-free too. What does he contribute? Mom stepped forward, pushing past Dad. That's enough. I will not have you disrespecting your brother like this. He's going through a difficult period. So am I. The words burst from me. I'm working full-time, paying off student loans, trying to save for my own place, and somehow I've become the family maid in the process. You ungrateful little. Mom's hand flew up, and before I could react, she slapped me hard across the face. The sound cracked through the hallway like a gunshot. I staggered backhand, rising to my stinging cheek, too shocked to speak. Mom had never hit me before. Never. Listen to me, she hissed, her face inches from mine. Either you start showing proper respect to this family, especially your brother, or you can get out. Feed your brother or get out, worthless girl. From the corner of my eye, I saw Ethan's smirking arms crossed over his chest. He was enjoying this, watching me being put in my place. Margaret, calm down, Dad said, placing a hand on Mom's shoulder. But his eyes remained cold as he looked at me. Alexandra, this behavior stops now. Go downstairs and make breakfast for your brother. Then you'll clean up the mess from last night's gathering. After that, we'll discuss your attitude adjustment. I stood frozen, my cheek, throbbing, tears threatening to spill. When I didn't immediately move toward the stairs, Dad's expression darkened further. Now, Alexandra. Number. The word came out barely above a whisper. What did you just say? Dad's voice dropped to a dangerous growl. I lifted my chin, meeting his gaze. I said no. I'm not making breakfast. I'm not cleaning up Ethan's mess. I'm not his servant. Dad's face contorted with rage. Without warning, he unbuckled his leather belt and slid it from the loops of his jeans. You need to be taught respect, young lady. Fear shot through me like ice water. Dad hadn't used his belt on me since I was 13, when I'd missed curfew by 20 minutes. The memory of that pain flashed through my mind. Harold, Mom exclaimed, but there was no real protest in her voice, just surprise at the escalation. She needs to learn, Dad said firmly, doubling the belt in his hand. One way or another. I backed up until I hit my dresser. Dad, please, this is crazy. What's crazy is your disrespect, he raised the belt. Turn around. Panic seized me. I darted to the side, trying to get past him to the door, but he grabbed my arm with his free hand, yanking me back. The first strike of the belt caught me across the upper arm. Pain exploded along the welt, and I cried out. Stop, please stop. I tried to shield myself with my arms as the belt came down again, catching my back this time. You will learn to respect this family, Dad shouted, landing another blow. 3 more strikes followed in quick succession. I collapsed to the floor, curling into a protective ball, sobbing. Through my tears, I saw Ethan watching from the doorway, his expression a mixture of shock and something else. Satisfaction. Was he actually pleased to see me being beaten? Finally, breathing heavily, Dad stopped. He threaded his belt back through his jeans loops while I remained huddled on the floor. When you're ready to apologize and fulfill your responsibilities, you can come downstairs. Not before. They left, closing the door behind them. I stayed on the floor for what felt like hours, my body throbbing from the welts, my mind numb with shock and betrayal. Eventually, I crawled to my bed and pulled out my phone with trembling hands. Through tears, I texted Jessica, "Can I come over emergency?" Her response was immediate. "Of course. What's wrong?" I couldn't bring myself to type out what had happened. "Tell you when I get there. Leaving now." I packed a small bag with essentials, moving carefully to avoid aggravating my injuries. As I slipped out the back door, I heard my family in the kitchen, the clatter of dishes, and the sound of Ethan laughing as if nothing had happened, as if they hadn't just shattered my world completely. Walking to my car parked on the street each step, a reminder of the physical pain inflicted by my father and the emotional wounds cut by my entire family, I made a decision. I would never allow myself to be treated this way again. Not by anyone, and especially not by those who claimed to love me. Jessica lived in a small, one-bedroom apartment about 20 minutes from my parents' house. When she opened the door, her expression shifted from concern to horror as she took in my tear-stained face and the way I winced when she hugged me. "My God, Alex, what happened?" she asked, guiding me to her couch. Through broken sobs, I recounted everything. The party, the confrontation, my parents' reaction, and finally the beating. Jessica listened without interrupting, her face growing progressively paler. "We need to call the police," she said when I finished. "This is assault. Your dad should be arrested." I shook my head. "I can't. They're still my parents. I just need to get out of there permanently." "Then stay here." My couch pulls out. "You can stay as long as you need." "Are you sure I don't want to impose?" "Impose, Alex, we're talking about your safety here." Jessica squeezed my hand. "But we need a long-term plan. You can't live on my couch forever, and you shouldn't have to." Over the next few hours, we formulated a strategy. I would stay with Jessica for 2 weeks, maximum enough time to find a small studio apartment I could afford on my own. We scoured rental listings online, bookmarking potential options. Most were tiny studios in less desirable neighborhoods, but they represented freedom, and that was priceless. "What about your stuff at your parents' house?" Jessica asked. "I'll have to go back when they're not home," I said. "Get the important things at least." "I'll come with you. Safety in numbers." That Monday, I arrived at work early to speak with Diana, my supervisor. Despite her demanding nature, she had always been fair. I wasn't sure how much to reveal, but I knew I needed more income if I was going to survive on my own. I knocked on her office door at 7:30, a full hour before most employees arrived. "Come in," she called, looking up from her computer with surprise. "Alexandra, you're here early." "I wanted to talk to you about taking on additional responsibilities," I said, taking a seat across from her desk. "I know tax season is coming up, and there's always overflow work. I'm willing to handle extra clients if the opportunity is available." Diana studied me thoughtfully. "This is about money, isn't it?" I hesitated, then nodded. "I'm moving into my own place sooner than planned. It's going to stretch my budget thin." She leaned back in her chair. "Is everything okay? You've seemed distracted lately." Something in her tone, a genuine concern I rarely heard from my own family, broke through my composure. To my horror, tears welled in my eyes. "I'm sorry," I said, quickly wiping them away. "Personal issues. It won't affect my work." Diana pushed a box of tissues toward me. "Alexandra, I've been in this business for 25 years. I've seen plenty of employees go through personal crises. Whatever's happening, you can tell me. It stays in this room." Perhaps it was the kindness from an unexpected source, or maybe I was simply tired of carrying the burden alone, but I found myself telling Diana an abbreviated version of my situation. I kept it professional, focusing on the need to move out quickly rather than the details of the abuse, but I said enough. Diana's expression remained neutral, but her eyes hardened as I spoke. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "First, let me be clear that what you've described is unacceptable," she said finally. "No one deserves to be treated that way, especially by family." She tapped her pen against her desk, thinking, "As for work, yes, we can arrange additional clients for you. Lawrence in bookkeeping is also looking for weekend help with some of our small business accounts. Between the two, you could add another 15 to 20 hours weekly if you want." Relief washed over me. "I want. Thank you, Diana." Don't thank me yet. That's a lot of hours on top of your regular workload. It won't be easy. I can handle it, I assured her. I need this. She nodded. I'll email Lawrence today. And Alexandra, if you need time off to deal with your situation or if things escalate, tell me. Your safety comes first. For the next 2 weeks, I threw myself into work. I arrived at 7 a.m. and often didn't leave until 8 at night. Weekends were spent at the office with Lawrence logging small business expenses and preparing preliminary tax documents. The exhaustion was overwhelming, but every dollar earned brought me closer to freedom. Jessica helped me apartment hunt in the evenings. We visited 7 different places before finding one that balanced affordability with basic safety. It was a studio apartment in an older building, with just enough room for a bed, small table, and minimal furniture. The bathroom was tiny, the kitchen barely large enough for one person to stand in, but it was clean, had secure locks, and most importantly, it would be mine. The landlord, an elderly man named Mr. Fisher, required first and last month's rent, plus a security deposit. I was still about $500 short, even with my savings and extra work. Jessica offered to loan me the difference. Pay me back when you can, she insisted. This is important. I hadn't returned to my parents' house since the incident. My phone had dozens of missed calls and texts from my mother, ranging from angry demands to tearful pleas to come home. My father left voicemails saying we needed to talk about my behavior. Ethan sent a single text, Mom and Dad are freaking out. Just apologize and come home already. None of them asked if I was okay or where I was staying. Their concern was entirely about my return to the established order, not my well-being. During this time, I had one unexpected ally emerge. Mrs. Peterson, our next-door neighbor for the past 15 years, called me out of the blue one evening. Alexandra, it's Elaine Peterson from next door. Mrs. Peterson, how did you get my number? Your mother gave it to me years ago for emergencies, she explained. Listen, dear, I saw what happened that Saturday morning. My kitchen window faces your driveway. I saw you leave with a bag looking upset. There was shouting before that. She paused. I've been worried. A lump formed in my throat. Mrs. Peterson had always been kind to me, occasionally bringing over cookies or complimenting my gardens when I tended the flower beds. I'm okay, I said. Staying with a friend. Good. That's good. Another pause. Alexandra, I don't want to overstep, but I've watched that family of yours for years. The way they treat you compared to your brother. It isn't right. Tears pricked my eyes. Having an outside observer validate what I'd felt for so long was surprisingly powerful. Thank you for saying that, I whispered. Do you need anything? Help moving things from the house, perhaps? I could let you know when they're all gone. Her offer touched me deeply. Actually, that would be helpful. I need to get some of my things. Mrs. Peterson became my unexpected co-conspirator. The following weekend, she texted to let me know my family had left for my aunt's birthday lunch, an event I had apparently been expected to attend. Jessica and I drove over immediately, and with Mrs. Peterson keeping watch, we quickly packed my remaining clothes, important documents, irreplaceable mementos, and a few small pieces of furniture that had been gifts from my grandmother. As we were loading the last box into Jessica's car, Mrs. Peterson approached with a small wrapped package. A housewarming gift, she said, pressing it into my hands. For your new beginning. Inside was a beautiful ceramic mug with the words, she believed she could, so she did painted in elegant script. I've watched you grow up, Alexandra Mrs. Peterson, said, her eyes misty. You've always been strong even when they couldn't see it. Now it's time to be strong for yourself. With my belongings secured and my new apartment lease signed, there was one final step in my plan. I needed to face my family directly before leaving for good. Not for their sake, but for mine. I needed closure, a clean break that would allow me to move forward without the weight of unspoken words. I decided to confront them during Sunday dinner when I knew everyone would be home. Jessica thought I was crazy. Why put yourself through that? She asked. You don't owe them an explanation. I'm not doing it for them, I replied. I'm doing it for me. I need to say these things out loud to their faces. Otherwise, they'll keep their power over me. With my apartment ready and my plan in place, I steeled myself for the final confrontation that would either break me completely or set me free. Sunday arrived cold and gray with a light drizzle that matched my mood. I had chosen 6 p.m. deliberately knowing that was when my family would be sitting down to the traditional Sunday roast. My stomach churned with anxiety as I parked in front of the house. I had grown up in the place that should have represented safety, but had become a prison instead. Jessica had insisted on driving me and waiting outside. "If you're not out in 30 minutes, I'm coming in," she had said firmly, "and I'm calling the police if I hear anything that sounds like trouble." I took a deep breath, gathered my courage, and used my key to enter for what I knew would be the last time. The familiar smells of pot roast and roasted potatoes filled the air, along with the murmur of voices from the dining room. I followed the sounds, my heart pounding against my ribs. The conversation stopped abruptly when I appeared in the doorway. 3 pairs of eyes turned to me, registering various degrees of shock and, in my father's case, immediate anger. "Alexandra," my mother recovered first, her tone, a mixture of relief and wariness. "You've finally come to your senses. We've been so worried." "Where have you been?" my father demanded, his fork clattering against his plate. 2 weeks without a word. Your mother has been beside herself." Ethan just stared a piece of bread halfway to his mouth, clearly uncomfortable with my unexpected appearance. "I'm not staying," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "I came to tell you that I'm moving out. Permanently." The announcement landed like a bomb at the dinner table. My mother's face crumpled in confusion, while my father's darkened with rage. "What are you talking about?" he growled. "Sit down. We'll discuss this after dinner." "There's nothing to discuss," I replied. "I've signed a lease. I've moved my things. This isn't a negotiation." My mother stood up, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "Alexandra, don't be ridiculous. You can't afford to live on your own. You're being impulsive because of our little disagreement." "Little disagreement," I repeated incredulously. "Dad beat me with a belt. You called me worthless. That's not a disagreement, Mom. That's abuse." The word hung in the air between us. Abuse. Finally naming it aloud sent a shiver down my spine. "Don't be dramatic," my father scoffed, though I noticed he wouldn't meet my eyes. "I disciplined you for disrespect the way my father disciplined me. That's not abuse." "I'm 23 years old, Dad. An adult. You don't discipline adults. You assaulted me." "How dare you?" he thundered, rising from his chair. "After everything we've done for you?" "What exactly have you done for me?" I asked, surprising myself with how calm I remained in the face of his anger. "You made me pay for my own education while covering all of Ethan's expenses. You turned me into his personal maid. You never once recognized my achievements or supported my goals." "That's not true," my mother protested weakly. "We've always supported you." "Really? When was the last time you asked about my job, or my friends, or anything about my life that wasn't related to how I could serve this family?" Silence. My mother looked away, unable to provide an example. Ethan finally spoke up, his tone dismissive. "You're overreacting as usual, so you had to do a few chores. Big deal." "A few chores," I laughed bitterly. "Ethan, I worked full-time and still cooked, cleaned, and did your laundry while you sat around playing video games. That's not normal. That's not how siblings should treat each other." "Oh, come on," he rolled his eyes. "It's not my fault you chose to do those things." "I didn't choose. I was expected to, demanded to, and beaten when I refused. I turned to my parents. You created this dynamic. You taught him that he deserves to be served, and you taught me that my only value is in serving others." My father's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "That's enough. I won't stand here and listen to these accusations in my own home." "You don't have to," I replied. "I'm leaving. I just wanted you to know why." I took a deep breath. "And to show you this." I pulled up the sleeve of my sweater, revealing the fading bruises and welts from my father's belt. They had turned a sickly yellow-green color, still clearly visible against my skin. My mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Ethan looked away uncomfortably. My father's expression flickered between anger and something that might have been shame quickly buried. If you ever touch me again, I said, looking directly at my father, I will go straight to the police with photographs of these bruises and file assault charges. Do you understand me? Are you threatening me? He demanded, but I could hear the uncertainty in his voice. I'm setting boundaries, I corrected him. Something I should have done years ago. I turned to leave, but my mother rushed forward, grabbing my arm. Alexandra, please. We're your family. We love you. I gently removed her hand. If this is love, Mom, then I'm better off without it. You'll come crawling back, Ethan called after me, his voice tight with anger. You can't make it on your own. I paused at the doorway and looked back at him. I've been making it on my own for years, Ethan. The only difference now is that I won't be carrying you too. With those final words, I walked out, closing the door firmly behind me. Jessica was waiting in her car engine running. One look at my face told her everything she needed to know. You okay? She asked as I climbed in. I took a deep breath, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. I will be. We drove to my new apartment in comfortable silence. The space was tiny, sparsely furnished, with a mix of secondhand items and a few pieces from my childhood room. But it was mine. A space where no one could demand my service or question my worth. As Jessica helped me unpack the last few boxes, she paused, holding a framed photo of my family from years ago, before Ethan was born. My parents and I at the beach, all smiling into the camera. Do you want to keep this? She asked hesitantly. I considered it for a moment, then nodded. Yes, to remember that they weren't always this way, and to remind myself never to become like them. That night, after Jessica left, I sat alone in my new home, feeling a complex mixture of grief, relief, and uncertainty about the future. But beneath it all was something I hadn't felt in years: peace. The peace of knowing I had finally stood up for myself, had refused to accept treatment that diminished my humanity. I was free, terrifyingly, wonderfully free. The first month in my studio apartment was a brutal adjustment. After growing up in a spacious suburban home, the confines of 300 square feet felt simultaneously liberating and claustrophobic. Everything was within arm's reach, which was convenient, but also a constant reminder of how small my world had become. Financial stress kept me awake most nights. Between rent, utilities, student loan payments, and basic necessities, my bank account dwindled rapidly, despite the extra hours I was working. I survived on ramen noodles, peanut butter sandwiches, and the occasional splurge of a rotisserie chicken that I would stretch for nearly a week of meals. Loneliness crept in during quiet evenings when work couldn't distract me. Despite everything, I found myself missing the familiar sounds of my family home. The creak of the stairs, the hum of the refrigerator, even the muffled arguments between my parents that had been the soundtrack of my childhood. I missed my mother's cooking and the garden I had tended in the backyard. Sometimes, in moments of weakness, I questioned my decision to leave. Jessica visited, often bringing takeout food or bottles of cheap wine, helping me adjust to independent living. It gets easier, she promised, during one of our impromptu dinner parties on my floor, no table yet to speak of. The first few months are the hardest. Work became my sanctuary. I threw myself into projects with a dedication that caught the attention of both Diana and Lawrence. 2 months into my self-imposed exile, Diana called me into her office. Your performance has been exceptional, she said, without preamble, particularly considering the hours you're putting in and the personal challenges you've been facing. Thank you, I replied, unsure where the conversation was heading. We're creating a new senior accountant position. More responsibility, more client interaction. She slid a folder across her desk. And significantly better compensation. I'd like you to consider applying. I opened the folder to find a job description, with a salary nearly 40% higher than my current one. My heart raced at the possibility of financial stability, of not having to count pennies at the grocery store or work weekends just to make rent. You think I'm qualified? I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. Diana's lips curved into a rare smile. Alexandra, I wouldn't have mentioned it if I didn't. You've shown remarkable resilience and dedication. Those are qualities we value as much as technical skill. I applied, interviewed, and 2 weeks later received the promotion. The salary increase transformed my financial situation overnight. I could afford to buy a small dining table, replace my secondhand mattress. With a new one, even put a modest amount into savings each month. The crushing weight of financial insecurity began to lift. My apartment slowly transformed from a bare survival space to an actual home. I hung artwork on the walls, bought plants that thrived under my care, found colorful throw pillows that brightened the space. Every addition was a conscious choice, reflecting my tastes without consideration for anyone else's preferences or comfort. The freedom to decide something as simple as wall color without negotiation or criticism felt revolutionary. 3 months after moving out, I received my first communication from my family. Mrs. Peterson had been keeping me updated occasionally, reporting that Ethan seemed increasingly frustrated with having to handle his own responsibilities. According to her, my mother had refused to pick up the slack after my departure, telling Ethan it was time he learned to take care of himself. The text came from Ethan, surprisingly. "This sucks. Mom won't do my laundry anymore and says I need to learn because you're not coming back. Are you really not coming back?" I stared at the message for a long time before responding, "I'm not coming back, Ethan. But if you want to learn how to use the washing machine, I can teach you sometime." He didn't reply, and I didn't push. The ball was in his court. A week later, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, Ethan stood in the hallway looking uncomfortable and slightly lost. He had lost weight, and his usually perfectly styled hair was unkempt. "Can I come in?" he asked, eyes darting around the small space behind me. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside to let him enter. He surveyed my apartment with obvious surprise. "It's nice," he said finally. "Small, but nice." "Thanks. What are you doing here, Ethan?" He shifted from foot to foot. "Things are different at home now. Mom keeps saying I need to contribute, and Dad's on my case about finding a job." He looked up at me with the puppy dog eyes that had always worked on our parents. I thought maybe I could stay here for a while, just until they calmed down. I almost laughed at the audacity. "You want to stay with me after everything that happened?" "Come on, Alex. That's all in the past. We're family." "Being family doesn't give you the right to treat people badly," I said, "or to use them when it's convenient." His expression hardened. "So that's a no. You're really not going to help me." "I am helping you," I replied, "by not enabling behavior that will make your life harder in the long run. You need to learn how to take care of yourself, Ethan. Everyone does." Whatever he muttered, turning toward the door, I knew this was a waste of time. As he reached for the doorknob, I called after him. "Ethan, my offer stands. If you want to learn how to do laundry, cook basic meals, handle a budget, I'll teach you. Not because I'm your servant, but because I'm your sister and I do care about you." He paused, hand on the door, back to me. For a moment, I thought he might take me up on the offer. Then, without another word, he left, closing the door firmly behind him. 6 months after I moved out, my phone rang with my mother's number. I hesitated before answering, heart pounding. "Hello?" "Alexandra." My mother's voice sounded smaller than I remembered. "How are you?" "I'm well," I said cautiously. "How are you?" "We miss you," she said, ignoring my question. "Your father and I have been talking. We think it's time to put this unpleasantness behind us. Come for dinner this Sunday. We can all start fresh." I closed my eyes, gathering my thoughts. "Have you and Dad discussed what actually happened? The years of unequal treatment, the verbal abuse, Dad hitting me with a belt?" A long pause. "We may have made some mistakes," she conceded reluctantly, "but we're still your parents. We love you." "Love requires respect, Mom. Do you understand that what happened was wrong?" Another pause. "Your father was raised differently. In his generation, discipline was more physical." "That's not an apology or acknowledgement, Mom. That's an excuse." "What do you want from us?" Alexandra, frustration crept into her voice. "To grovel, to beg forgiveness. We're trying to make amends here." I sighed. "I don't want groveling. I want genuine understanding that how you treated me was harmful. I want real change." Well, Ethan is doing his own laundry now, she offered, as if this was a monumental concession, and helping with dishes sometimes. It wasn't enough, not nearly enough, but it was something. A tiny step. I'm not ready for Sunday dinner, I said finally, but maybe we could meet for coffee sometime. Just you and me. Neutral territory. I suppose that would be acceptable, she replied, clearly disappointed but willing to compromise. The cafe near your old high school, perhaps. I'll text you a time that works. After we hung up, I sat in thoughtful silence. The conversation hadn't been the full acknowledgement I wanted, but it was more than I expected. My mother had reached out, had admitted to some mistakes, had accepted my boundary about meeting on neutral ground. It was a beginning, however small. Over the following months, I constructed a new relationship with my family, built on carefully maintained boundaries and limited contact. Coffee with my mother evolved into occasional lunch. My father remained distant but civil when our paths crossed. Ethan surprised me by eventually taking me up on my offer to teach him basic life skills, though his progress was slow and reluctant. They were still my family, with all the complicated history and emotional baggage that entailed. But they no longer had the power to define my worth or control my choices. I had claimed that power for myself. At work, my career continued to flourish. Diana became a mentor as well as a boss, guiding me toward opportunities I never would have pursued on my own. I made new friends, joined a hiking group, started dating occasionally. My world expanded beyond the narrow confines it had been limited to for so long. 1 year after moving out, I sat on my small balcony watching the sunset with a glass of wine. My apartment had become a true reflection of myself, a safe haven decorated with objects that brought me joy. My financial situation was stable, my social circle supportive. My future full of possibilities I was only beginning to explore. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been nights of tears and self-doubt moments when I questioned every decision. The wounds inflicted by years of emotional manipulation and culminating in physical abuse didn't heal overnight. Some days they still ached. But I had learned lessons that transformed my life. I learned that love should never require diminishing yourself, that setting boundaries isn't selfish but necessary, that being family doesn't give anyone the right to treat you as less than human. And most importantly, that my value isn't determined by how well I serve others, but by how authentically I live my own life. If you're watching this and something in my story resonates with your own experience, please know you're not alone. Family dynamics can be complicated and painful, but you deserve respect and safety. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story helped you in any way, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes the family we choose is more important than the family we're born into.